Hi, and thanks for joining me in this discussion on icing. We are going to talk about flight planning in this video. First off, we'd like to take a look at two items. Number one, the big picture, and number two, observed icing. Whenever you plan a flight into icing conditions, you need to be mindful of the big picture. What we mean by the big picture is weather patterns. Where are the low pressure systems, high pressure systems, cold fronts, warm fronts? Where are there clouds and where is there precipitation? So this takes some time to analyze the weather to figure out what's going on and what's causing the icing conditions over your region. So you may have to look at many different products, weather products, to figure out where icing can be expected and where it will occur in the future. Once you get a handle on the big picture, then you can start to look at the weather in more detail. And if you want to know where observed icing is occurring, then you probably have to look at pilot reports. Pilot reports are the only way that you know that there is icing in clouds. And remember also, the absence of pilot reports of icing, does not mean that there is no icing in that area. It just means that perhaps maybe no pilot made a report in that area. So pilot reports are invaluable, whether they are in the textual format as you see here, or in a chart format where you can see the geographical distribution of known icing. The next item on our flight planning for icing checklist is areas of analyzed icing. What I mean by analyzed icing is looking at all available information, taking that information, and then sorting it through an algorithm to determine where there is the highest probability of icing and also the greatest severity of icing. The Aviation Weather Center does this through the current icing potential, or the CIP. What it does, it involves no humans. It takes data, specifically computer model data, satellite imagery, radar imagery, surface observations, lightning data, and pilot reports. And it filters all that information to produce a product which shows you at that specific time where the greatest probability of icing is and also the greatest severity of icing is. Using all available information, it determines where there are areas of clouds and precipitation, and from that, it estimates the potential for supercooled liquid water and also supercooled large drops. You can find this information at various locations. Specifically, the Aviation Weather Center is the source of this information. Go to their main page under the Forecast tab, scroll down to Icing, and it'll take you to a page that has 4 different graphics. You want to click on the lowest left graphic, which represents forecast icing. Or in ForeFlight, you can go to Imagery and then click on Icing Severity Analysis. Take you to the page of the current icing potential. Now remember, the current icing potential is an analysis. In other words, it's for right now. It's not a forecast, but it's the conditions right now. If you look at the time bar, it'll show you that the time is 00 hours. So in other words, it is for current conditions at this time. Icing potential page has a lot of options. One of them is the severity or probability. If you click on the drop-down menu, when you select severity plus SLD, it'll give you the severity of icing and also will give you the locations where you can find SLDs, or supercooled large drops. Remember, SLDs are drops that are bigger than 50 microns in diameter, and they're hazardous for aircraft operations. Highlighting or zooming in on a region, looking at severity and SLDs, you can see that They have various shades of blue to indicate the intensity of icing, whether it's none, trace, light, moderate, or heavy. And then also the hatched red areas indicate where there are SLD threats. The definitions of icing severity are a little bit different than what is in the Aeronautical Information Manual. Specifically, the way they plot threats here at the Aviation Weather Center and the current icing potential, it's based on the rate of accumulation of 1/4 of an inch of ice on an airfoil. If it takes an hour for that 1/4 of an inch to build up, then they call it trace. Light would be between 15 minutes and 1 hour. Moderate, 5 minutes to 15 minutes. And then finally, heavy icing is where you get a 1/4 inch of ice on an airfoil in less than 5 minutes. Options that you can select include the severity without looking at SLDs, so you can get the intensity of ice. Or you can look at the severity in terms of probability, where if you choose prob greater than 25%, it'll only show you areas of icing with probabilities greater than 25%. There is also a drop-down menu item for severity with probabilities greater than 50%. And then also you can click on probability and I'll show you the probability of icing in terms of percentage anywhere on the map in different shades of colors. Also have the option of seeing the altitudes or looking at different altitudes where icing potential exists. If you click on max, then that will give you the greatest icing severity at any altitude above a given point on the map. However, you can select different altitudes, usually about every 2,000 feet, starting at 1,000 feet and then going up, of course, every 2,000. So you'd have 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, so on and so forth, all the way up to flight level 290. Here are examples of the CIP for 3,000 feet MSL and 7,000 feet MSL, seeing the potential for ice. At 3,000 on this particular day, it looks like there is really no icing across the United States, whereas if you go up to 7,000 feet, there is icing across North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, and also Michigan. Our flight planning for icing checklist is forecast icing. Forecast icing is given in several different products. The first one, probably the most important, is SIGMETs. Remember that SIGMETs provide a forecast of severe icing. SIGMETs are both graphical and also textual. Here's a graphical image showing you an area of icing across the northeastern part of the United States, across New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and also a little bit of Connecticut and Pennsylvania. And it shows severe icing from 8,000 up to 12,000 feet in this particular graphic. AirMets Zulu provide forecast areas of moderate icing. Here's a graphic showing you across the United States the areas where you can expect moderate icing. I zoomed into the area of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Montana, showing an area of moderate icing from somewhere between 4,000 to 8,000 feet, starting at that altitude, based upon the freezing level across that region, and topping out at 18,000 feet. The way of assessing the icing risk in the future is to go to the future icing potential, or the FIP. This is the same product as the CIP, but looking into the future. And it time steps an hour to 3 hours into the future, depending upon the time step, how close you are to your departure time, and then how far you're looking out into the future. It goes all the way out to 18 hours in the future. And also, you can pick different altitudes and also different times. If you look at the first time, which is 00 hours, that is your current icing potential. That is an analysis, and it will say analysis on the chart. But if you go out into the future, like we did here on the right-hand image, we looked at the 12-hour forecast into the future, and that is your future icing potential. And that is how you flight plan for icing looking at various products.